Fasting is a unique spiritual purification and journey to God. It encourages self-control, sacrifice, and spirituality. Fasting is usually understood as the abstinence from some or all food and drink. Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, and many other religions use fasting as a method of purification, personal discipline, and orientation towards their God. This documentary will look into how and why fasting was prescribed in some major religions.
The Holy Quran, which is the revealed scripture of Islam, mentions that the main reason for fasting is to be more aware of God, to be mindful of God. As the verse says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam kama kutiba alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. So in this verse of the Holy Quran, which says, O you who believe, so it is speaking to people who will be taking this from a faith perspective, not just people who want to fast, say, for secular reasons, for health reasons, for example. So, it is addressing those who believe in God. Fasting has been written for you, just as it has been written for those people who came before you, so that you might be mindful of God, or of Allah, as we say in the Islamic tradition. And this phrasing here does definitely say and acknowledge that fasting is something that was part of the revealed faiths before Islam. It is just a continuation of that tradition. And the main purpose, although certainly not the only purpose or the only benefit of fasting, is to be mindful of God by removing all of the distractions we have in our daily lives, by distancing ourselves from our more animalistic side, which is more interested in food and drink and taking care of the body. We then are more free to ponder on the spiritual reality, to develop our soul, and to get more into touch with who we really are as souls, as spiritual entities, and as human beings. Also, fasting is something which brings a lot of calmness and tranquility to people. When we're busy with normal life, and especially if we're indulging in a lot of food or drink or various activities, we may not necessarily have this sense of peace and calm. But by abstaining from these things and again being more of our essential selves, our essential spiritual selves, we do experience this sense of tranquility, which is of course very much connected with our relationship to God. And this is something, in fact, the daughter of the Holy Prophet, Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her, mentioned when she said that Allah, or God, made fasting something we had to do so that it would calm people's hearts, so we would enjoy this sort of spiritual tranquility that we may not necessarily experience throughout the rest of the year. So the primary reason that we fast is spiritual, to come closer to God, and also to have more of an understanding of the divine, including the peace of the divine inside our hearts, and also just to overcome our baser desires, our baser tendencies. In Islamic thought, the primary journey of the human being in this world is from an animalistic being, an irrational being, someone who's only concerned with eating and drinking and so on, a journey from that into a more angelic being, or as I said, we can be even better than the angels, through controlling our own whims and desires and instead mastering them and becoming more spiritually developed. Another very useful aspect of fasting during the month of Ramadan, or fasting in any tradition, of course, is that it does help us to reform ourselves, to take another look at our lives. And if there are any things we're doing in our lives, perhaps any life decisions that we have to make, it helps us to prioritize what's important and to go away from doing things which may be unhealthy or simply wastes of time, not useful. But also it's a good time of the year to help us overcome any sort of dependencies, or shall I say addictions we may have. I don't even necessarily mean very severe addictions such as smoking or, God forbid, drugs, although these may be issues, but even minor addictions we may have. For many people, tea or coffee is an addiction, sugar is an addiction, eating frequently, sometimes watching a lot of television programs, whatever it happens to be. And by going through this month of purification, we're able to set aside these unhealthy behaviors or these unhealthy dependencies and become newer people. So not only are we spiritually purified in this month, also physiologically we are purified as well.
In Hinduism, upavas, the terminology, upavas in Sanskrit language means to be closer to the Supreme, the absolute truth. So if at any particular given time a person has got to go closer to the Lord, then his daily material activities like eating food, okay, then preparing the food, going to the market and getting it done is a waste, and he cannot be closer to the Lord to meditate, to do the rituals, to do other things. So it is mentioned in our scriptures, in the Hindu scriptures, the Vedic scriptures, that upavas, to keep abstain from food on a particular day and wholly and solely dedicate that time to attain the Supreme. The purpose of fasting is to be closer to God, yeah, and to be closer to God you will require to do many other things like meditate, chant His holy names, or visit the temple, other things. Fasting is not only from food, fasting is from everything like entertainment, like other activities, and solely dedicate that whole time to spiritual activities. So like how we all keep the Ramadan for a month, like this we also have got the Purushottam Mass 1 month time, or we also have that day, nominated day, and we abstain from many things like all the entertainments and also sex life, yeah, and also eating food and water, and it goes on. It depends on how you take it individually. Like some people who are like elder, they will not keep all these fasts, but those who are younger generation, they can keep the fast fully. So it depends on you. There are no hard and fast rules, but it depends on oneself. See, on a daily basis, we go through many things, like we go to work, okay, we go and earn our salary, then we buy the food stuff, then we cut it, cook it, and then offer it or whatever. Like in Muslims, they halal, do halal. Like that, we also have got a concept of offering it. So all this time we spend, okay, and it is like a waste of time. The main concept of upavas is to get closer to the Lord. So we will stop all these activities, abstain from doing them, and just dedicate that time solely in learning, in meditating, in understanding the scriptures, and to be close to God.
Well, the Jewish year contains different fasts, of which the most important by far is the Day of Atonement, which comes in September, October. Like the Muslim year, the Jewish year is based on the moon, on the lunar months, but they are also pinned to the solar year so that dates can't vary all that much. The Day of Atonement is the 10th day of the Hebrew month of Tishrei, and it follows on from the new year. And this period of the year is a profound time of reflection, of repentance, of apologizing, and of seeking to understand more deeply what God wants for us in the world. And on the Day of Atonement, there is a strict fast from the beginning of sunset on the evening until after sunset on the next day, which includes not eating, not drinking, no sexual relations, no bathing or washing for pleasure, and one traditionally also doesn't wear leather shoes because leather shoes would involve the death of an animal. The Torah tells us to fast on this day to afflict our souls, and there have been many different understandings of what that means. Some have said that suffering itself through fasting is an atonement that brings us near to God. But many people think, well, fasting itself isn't enough. It's how do we use the fact that we are fasting? The prophet Isaiah said, does God want people to bend their heads like a bulrush? It's what you do. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked. If you see the oppressed, set them free. Don't hide from your own flesh. And we read these very powerful words which are about social justice, on the Day of Atonement. So there, it's really to make us think about our values, how we treat our fellow human being, and how we're going to change our lives afterwards. At the end of the day, you've been in a different world. On the Day of Atonement, one doesn't work. One spends the whole day in prayer. And you feel like I've been outside my body. And I haven't spent my day filling my body's needs. I haven't thought about food. I haven't shopped. I haven't worried about it. I've been attached to God. And I've been searching to find my own soul and heart and to listen to what God wants. So it's like a day in the world beyond. A day not of the physical, but of the spiritual. And yet others say, well, there are millions of people in the world who are starving. And unlike what we hope at the end of the Day of Atonement or Ramadan, one goes home to eat, they won't go home to eat. So we touch on hunger, and we are told that a day of fasting is only complete if we give charity. So it's also about what we're motivated to give. Now, all these reasons make the Day of Atonement perhaps the most important day in the Jewish year.
In Buddhism, fasting is an initial stage of self-discipline used to acquire self-control. The Buddha himself practiced extreme acts of fasting for a few years. It was something that he was able to excel at and become renowned for prior to his enlightenment experience. The Pali Canon, the ancient Buddhist texts, tell how the Buddha kept fasting and reducing the amount of food he was taking until he was only eating 1 grain of rice a day.
Jesus Christ himself asked for fasting in the Gospel according to Matthew. And also he instructed the people to fast with quality. For example, he asked them when they fast that they should not tell anybody that they are fasting. And also they have to wash their heads and faces and anoint them with oil, which is very Middle Eastern thing, that when I go out, that nobody notices that I fast. So the fasting according to Christianity and according to the Lord Jesus Christ himself is a private matter, a personal matter between you and God, between me and God. And it is not something to share with the society. Look, I am fasting. And when I pray, which is also part of the whole process of fasting, also it's a personal thing that I go inside my room, close the door, and pray to God. So fasting has been a big tradition in the church, and also it is a family tradition, but it is only family. It's not the family and the society. So when I fast and I encourage my family to fast, it's an act of worshiping God through fasting. And in the early church, fasting is like Ramadan. It was abstaining from food. There are no regulations in Christianity how to fast, what to eat, what not to eat. Every church has a different tradition of fasting. In the technicality, I mean. For example, in the Orthodox Church and also in the Catholic Church, they try not to eat anything which has to do with animals, like meat, like eggs, milk, anything which comes from animals. They don't. They eat vegetables and they eat fruits, and anything they cook with olive oil, but not with butter, for example, which is from the animal. Also, there has been a huge tradition that you don't eat anything until the sunset. That is a very old tradition from the first couple of centuries in Christianity. You abstain from food and drink until the sunset. But all that is a process of understanding how people who do not have feel. Not eating will not make me more righteous and a better person. This is not the purpose. The purpose is by not eating and not drinking during the day, I feel for and with the others who have less than me. With the fasting, there has been the tradition of giving. Fasting has the tradition of generosity. So in the early church, they encouraged Christians to calculate how much would I usually give a day for food and drinks. And the amount of money would be given to some widows or orphans or humanitarian causes from the early church. So fasting is a spiritual exercise to connect and build a better relationship, first with God and second with each other, without making a big fuss about it.
All religions that have prescribed fasting have their own methods. Each method differs in duration, frequency, types of food or drink to abstain from, days of year to fast on, and various other details. These specifics have their own religious significances and benefits.
The Islamic method of fasting is different from the method of fasting in some of the other world's traditions. We do not only fast from food, but we also abstain from any sort of liquid drink, as well as smoking or some intimate activities. And this sort of comprehensive fasting is something that we're not expected to do continuously for the entire month, as in every single moment. We wouldn't be able to survive not drinking any water for the entire month. But we do it from dawn until sunset. So we do it during the hours of the day when there is sunlight, that is to say, until sunset. The main time of the year in which we fast is the holy month of Ramadan, which is 29 or 30 days. And because this is a month in the lunar calendar, it's not always in sync with the solar calendar, so this month comes in different parts of the year. So for example, it's not always in the winter or always in the summer, it changes from year to year with respect to the solar calendar. However, I would mention that there are many other times of the year when it is recommended for us to fast in our religion. For example, it's recommended that we fast to commemorate a number of sacred occasions, a number of religious occasions. And it's also recommended in general that people fast twice a week if they can. Of course, not everyone who is Muslim does this, but many times people who are Muslims will fast some of these other occasions throughout the year, just out of respect for Allah and respect for these religious occasions, or for the spiritual purification, or even sometimes for the health benefits that it brings. However, the month of Ramadan is known as the month of fasting, and indeed our fourth Imam, Imam Ali Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, has said that Allah, God, has honored this month of Ramadan by prohibiting food and drinks in it. That because this is such a sacred time, we should not be spending our time eating and drinking and enjoying ourselves in this way, but instead we should be paying attention to God in this time. As Muslims, we do believe that Satan himself is not present in our lives during this month, so it is much easier for us to do good things and to be good people, and we enjoy a sort of spiritual blessing because of this. The Holy Quran also mentions that the month of Ramadan is the month in which the Holy Quran was revealed to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We believe that the Holy Quran was revealed in its entirety onto the heart of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon him. And then also there was a gradual revelation of the verses, but the entirety of the revelation was in this month. And in this month, there is also the holiest night of the year, which is known as the Night of Power, Laylat al-Qadr. And this is a night which we do typically spend in prayer and remembrance of Allah. And it is said on this night that Allah writes the destiny for everyone throughout the year. So it's not, of course, as if you can mess up throughout the year and then you pray on this night and everything will be okay. But to commemorate the importance of this night, we do extra prayers. And the Holy Quran speaks a bit about this night. It says that on this holy night, in the month of Ramadan, the angels come down from the heavens, and even the ruh, or the spirit of Allah, which is said to be the most powerful spiritual creation of Allah, something very enormous, spiritually speaking, that these things descend to the earth. And so the time is very spiritually charged, so to speak, until the morning of this night, the night of power. So these are some of the special things about the month of Ramadan and why it is such a sacred and spiritual time, and why one of the things we do to commemorate this month is to fast. Although fasting is not the only thing we do. We also spend more time reciting the Holy Quran, the Book of Allah, and engaging in other forms of worship. And also, it tends to be a community time, a time when people get together with other believers, or sometimes people who adhere to other faiths, friends, family, and so on. So it is usually a time of sharing and a time of fellowship, as well as a time of worship. And this is another very beautiful thing about this month.
See, in the Hindu scriptures, and that is the Vedas, there are various mentions about fasting. Like, firstly, we fast on specific dates, like the appearance day of a particular incarnation of the Lord, or specific months. Like currently, we have got the 4 months of Chaturmasya, which are happening from Shravan, that is August, September, October and November. So in this particular 4 months, that is the monsoon season. So we abstain from certain things, like we eat only once a day. Any time of the day, you can break the fast and have food grains and other stuffs. The second fast is on the 11th day of the waxing moon and the waning moon. That is called Ekadashi. So every 11th day of the waxing moon and every 11th day of the waning moon, all the Hindus keep a fast. On that particular fast, you fast from grains and beans. You can have milk products, you can have some fruit, or you can have some water, juice, anything. And there is a particular month called Purushottam Mas. In that particular month, it is called Adhik Mas. Like, you see, the year comprises of 365 days. Yeah, so 360 days make up 12 months. So every year, 5 days are added over and above. So every 4 years, there will be one more month added to the calendar in Hinduism. So that month we dedicate to doing spiritual activities and fasting. So in that particular time also, people in India and Asian people, they will fast from various things. Like, you can decide what you want to fast, and you can keep a without water fast like the Muslims keep in Ramadan, or you can as per your body, you can eat for certain things once a day, or you can have some fruits or some juices. So those are the different fasts which people keep. And there is another way of people fasting, like particular demigods, like not the supreme personality of Godhead, but certain demigods are there. They are in charge of certain things, like the wind god, then the water god, like this. So people also fast for them and get the benefits. So they keep a particular day, like suppose a person keeps a Monday, so he will keep the Monday as a fast and not eat and abstain from eating and keep it for the rest of his life. Some people can choose Tuesday, Saturday, whichever. It depends on the gods, and then they fast on these particular days. The fast starts at midnight, that is 12 o'clock, and it goes for the whole day, and sometimes it even goes for the next day. And in certain times, there is a fast of half a day, like 12 hours. So it depends on when, according to the constellations of the stars, the moon and the sun, when the day starts and when the day ends, it depends on the fast. So different fasts vary. The spiritual activities which one does is going to the services at the temple, okay, chanting the holy names, meditating, reading the holy scriptures, and also doing hymns, singing. The main concept of fasting, that is upavas, is to be closer to God. Yeah, and each individual person, okay, as per his capacity and as per his credentials, will fast. So we can take any particular day or any particular month or any particular festival and fast. So in Hinduism, there are 33 million demigods, and each demigod has got different sections to control. Like for example, there is a wind god, there is the gods for rain, there is the gods for sun, light, and various others. So each one in Hindu community, they will have a soft corner or liking for a particular demigod, and then they follow according to that. So it differs. You can't base a generalized rule or norm for fasting in Hinduism. So everybody is different, and they follow according to their own culture.
Now there are other fasts as well, and these other fasts are rooted in history and events of sadness and trauma and destruction that have befallen the Jewish people. There are 5 other fasts during the year, of which the most important is the fast called Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av. And this coming year, it'll be during Ramadan. Ramadan is the same as the Hebrew month of Av, or almost the same. And so I've thought it means a lot to me that Jews and Muslims will be fasting together on this same day. There are traditions in how one prepares for the fast. On the Day of Atonement, it's actually traditional to eat during the day before the fast, to eat regularly, and to have a proper meal before the fast. I mean, this is also a matter of personal choice. Some people prefer not to eat too much. Some people need to drink a lot. It's each according to their physical needs, but it's traditional to have a family meal. And that meal itself is a spiritual occasion. I always bless each of the children at that meal, talk a bit to them about the good things they've done in the past year and our hopes for the coming year. We would always be together. I have very deeply in my memory how my father used to bless me before the Day of Atonement. And one finishes a bit before the fast begins, and then one walks to the synagogue. And this is all part of the solemn mood of that whole stretch of the Jewish year. After the fast, most people gather in groups and invite those who don't have places to go and eat a celebratory meal at the close of the fast after dark. And the Day of Atonement is followed by our harvest festival. So the tradition is to begin to build the hut or the booth that we will decorate with leaves and fruit to celebrate. The fast of the month of Av is really very different because it's a time of mourning, and the days before it are already days of mourning. It's traditional in the 9 days before not to eat meat or drink what wine is allowed to Jews, but not to drink wine in those days except the Sabbath. And on the day itself, to eat minimally, only very little, and the last meal before the fast should be very simple. And many have the custom to sit on the ground and eat a boiled egg with ash on it, because the egg symbolizes both death and rebirth, and the ash destruction. So, and one eats it in silence to prepare for the day of mourning. And at the end of that fast, one also doesn't eat in celebration. The mood of sorrow hasn't lifted completely, and one tends to still eat. One can eat one's fill, but one eats quite simply, and usually not in big groups, but just with one's family or oneself. Well, the Day of Atonement is always in early autumn. It moves somewhere between early September and mid or late October, because although the Jewish year is a lunar year, the lunar year is nevertheless tied to the solar cycle so that it can't move very far. So the fast tends to begin 6 o'clock in the evening. The full fasts in Judaism begin at the beginning of sunset on the evening before, as the sun begins to sink. And they last for 25 hours until the sun is completely set and one can see the stars, if it isn't too cloudy, at the end of that day. So the Day of Atonement will be in the autumn, And the fast of the 9th of Av will be in the summer, usually in July, perhaps at the very beginning of August. So the first part of the fast at nightfall feels shorter, but the day is a long day. All the other fasts in Judaism are not 25 hours, but from dawn until dusk.
Christianity has different denominations, and every denomination has a different tradition for fasting. For example, the most usual and known fasting time and the most important fasting time is the 5 weeks or the 40 days before Easter. So Easter is the climax of fasting, and Easter is celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And the last week of this time or this period is what we call in Christianity the Holy Week. And the Holy Week is between Palm Sunday, which is the entrance of Jesus Christ to Jerusalem, and the Good Friday, which is the cross, the crucifixion itself. This week we call a Holy Week, which has different rituals and traditions and all this, climaxing to the Sunday of Easter and resurrection, where we break eggs, because the egg is the symbol of new life. But the 40 days before that, in most traditions, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, all kinds of denominations, they observe the fasting of the 40 days before Easter. But the technicality differs. For example, the Protestant tradition emphasizes on what you give up for Lent, which is the word for fasting in Christianity. For Lent, you may give up cigarettes only, which has nothing to do with food. So in many traditions in Christianity, it's not necessarily that you give up food and during the fasting time. You may give up smoking, you may give up drinking alcohol, you may give up something you eating too much, anything you feel that this is excessive or something not very good. With that, we encourage people to take on something, not only give up something, like more prayers, reading the Bible. So giving more generously. With the giving up, which is very important, that we learn the sacrifice, we have to learn how to get new habits, new good habits, and root ourselves in the faith through prayers, through reading the scriptures, through going to the church, through helping others. All this we might forget in the busyness of our daily life. And there is another time for fasting in Christianity, which is before Christmas. The Advent, we say. Advent is the beginning of the Christian calendar year. Usually 4 weeks before Christmas time. And also this time, a lot of denominations and a lot of Christians, they take it as an opportunity to fast. The same thing, but it is less in time, shorter, and less significant than the fasting, the Lent of Easter. Another thing, like the Catholic Church encourages people, Catholics, to fast Wednesdays and Fridays, because if you fast every week, you are always in touch with fasting, with giving up, with sacrificing, and you are always in touch with yourself, that you have more spiritual discipline, generosity, giving. And that is not only twice a year, but also every week. With that saying, the Orthodox and the Catholic, they have 15 days in August, from the 1st of August until the 15th of August. That is the fasting which is dedicated to Mary, the Virgin Mary. And of course, it's not to her, but it's to God, but celebrating her life and sacrifice and giving us Jesus Christ. So on the 15th of August, they celebrate the day of Mary.
Although fasting is prescribed in various religions, some are exempt from it for different reasons.
The Holy Quran mentioned, when it says that fasting is required for us, that some people should not fast. They are not required to fast, and as a matter of fact, they shouldn't. And these are people for whom fasting is genuinely harmful, or for whom it would be a tremendous hardship, an unusual hardship. So if someone has a medical condition which would get worse through fasting, or if it would be dangerous for them to fast. I know some people who have severe diabetes, for example, who can't fast, or if they need to be taking medication throughout the day, in these sorts of conditions, then they should not be fasting, because fasting is something which is supposed to be good for us, not harmful to us. And even this verse in the Holy Quran says that Allah intends ease for us. He does not intend difficulty. Well, we may sometimes experience fasting as a form of difficulty because we as human beings like to eat and drink regularly. In the end, it is a form of ease for us. It lightens our burdens in life. It makes our souls lighter too. However, if it's genuinely going to be burdensome from a health perspective, then we shouldn't do it. Or if a lady is expecting a child and fasting would be harmful for her or for the baby, also she should not be fasting because there's a greater purpose there. And we know that women are in extra need of nutrition and water during these times. So in these sorts of cases, people are not expected to fast. But for those of us who are able-bodied and able to fast, that is to say, we're not just not wanting to fast because we don't feel like it, but for those of us who physically can do it, then of course we should do it. And I would observe that sometimes when someone is a little bit resistant to fasting, so it's not as if they've got a major health problem or something, but they just don't want to fast, it may be that these are the people who need to fast the most. Because one of the things that fasting does for us physiologically is it helps to purify our bodies from a lot of the toxins and unhealthy substances that we acquire throughout the year, whether it's from the environment, all of the pollution we encounter, all of the artificial substances we use and we have in our homes, or whether it's from food additives, medicine, chemicals, etc. When we have a lot of these substances in our body, it can be a little bit uncomfortable to start fasting because it is a process of beginning to remove these things. But that's all the more reason to go through it because in the end it's much better for our bodies to be free of these substances. It's much better for our health. But indeed, if someone has some sort of health condition or reason why fasting would be harmful to them, then they shouldn't fast.
There are a few exceptions, like it depends on your own caliber and capacity. Like I can give you one story, like in the Mahabharata, like you might have heard, there was some characters and one of them was Bhimsen, and there were 5 Pandavas, 5 brothers in the story which depicted Lord Krishna and many others, wherein all of them could sustain and keep the fast of without water or without food. But there was one brother who was like very bulky and very big, and the fire in his belly was very high. So he required some food. So he went to the spiritual master and asked for some benediction. And he asked for a certain these limitations which he had. And he got it sanctioned. And in that one particular day, he can eat and he can also drink water. That was given to him. But out of the 26 fasts or 24 fasts in a year, he has got to abstain from food and water on one particular day. That is in the summertime, that is in the June or May time season. So he will not be able to eat or drink. So that was given to him. So certain things are like that. And there are some exceptions, like if a mother who's about to deliver the baby, then she is not supposed to fast. Or if you're sick and if you're having some operation, or the medical, the doctors have recommended for you to have certain things or medicines, then it is permitted.
There's a core Jewish teaching where the Torah says, these are God's commandments and you shall live by them. And the rabbis comment, and not die by them. So if there are health reasons for something like fasting, and it risks a person's health, then that person should not fast. It's not even that they need not fast. If it risks their health, they should not fast. And one gets the advice of doctors, and one should follow it. So somebody, for example, who has to take regular medication for a serious illness, a person who is diabetic and can't manage without the sugar, these people don't fast. Also, a nursing mother with a very young baby has to drink. Now, for those who can't fast, they're instructed to eat or drink only as much as their body really needs, and to keep it very simple, so that one's still part of it being a day which isn't a day of enjoyment of such things, but a day of the minimum. Interestingly, the Torah says that a person who doesn't fast on the Day of Atonement is cut off from their people. Now that only applies if a person can fast, but chooses not to. But I know that there are people who they have to eat for medical reasons, and they're doing the right thing by eating, but they feel bad about it in themselves. They feel separate and cut off. So I think not being able to fast is hard. The most serious of these fasts is the Day of Atonement. With all of the other fasts, if a person has to curtail them or cut them short, then that's not as serious. It's the Day of Atonement where a person really, really wants fully to fast together with all their people.
In Christianity, which is the major difference with Islam, there is no Sharia. There is no divine law, what to do, what not to do. It's totally up to you. If you feel unwell, don't fast. But you can fast in a different way. So since the fasting is not only about food, then you choose how you fast. You choose how to sacrifice in order to feel with people who have less than you, who are less privileged than you. So all the regulations we have about fasting are extremely flexible because we don't have the Sharia about it.
Fasting is a divine act shared by most religions and creeds. It manifests self-reflection, awareness of the needy, and focus towards the Creator.
Ahlul Bayt TV, the holy household for every household.